Today I have with me Katie Ann Powell. Katie Ann and I met online through LinkedIn and hit it off fabulously upon first conversation when she so kindly invited me to be a guest on her podcast. And I'll be honest, I don't actually always invite back, people who I've been a guest for aren't necessarily always a fit for my show. And Katie Ann, though, we hit it off so well, and I love what she is passionate about that I think that my audience, all of you, will benefit from. So here she is, and I'm really happy to introduce you because she has this really contagious, electrifying energy about her that you just want to be in her presence. So I'm
Oh,
sure you're
thank
going to be able to
you.
get that today. Yes, absolutely. It's true. It's absolutely true. So Katie Ann, welcome.
Thank you. You said it correctly. Sometimes conversations just hit it off, and your energies bounce off each other, and it is an honor to be on here with you.
Love that. Thank you. Okay, so here's the scoop about Katie Ann and her podcast that I have already been on. It's called Full Confidence Ahead. Isn't that a great name? And what she does in her, that she's passionate about in working wise and helping people, and through that podcast as well, is helping people with what, financial issues. And she refers to herself as she's actually trained as a financial counselor. And she also has some interesting side passions. She is a harpist, like for real, not just as a random hobby. I mean, I don't know if that's something that people pick up as a random hobby, but she actually is a professional harpist and has played over 20 years in 7 different countries and literally travels around playing the harp like for real, uh, not just not just randomly. So I'm so excited to hear more about that because that is not a common thing that I hear about on a day-to-day basis. So Katie Ann, tell us, gosh, I don't even know where to start. So first of all, let's go with the harp. When did that start? How does one start playing a harp? Because that is a gigantic instrument. And if I think about it, well, actually, right before we started recording, you mentioned, really it's like piano and organ are the only larger instruments. But I think most people, unless you're like Elton John or somebody like that, typically don't travel with their own pianos. But do you travel with your own harp? And tell us the backstory. How did this all happen?
It is such a funny and fun little story. I do travel with my harp. I have my own dolly for my harp, so I have wheels to put it on, and my car is pretty big. That's a benefit and a disadvantage with a harp. You always know that you have to buy a bigger car, and so you have the cost associated with that, which is something you just always have to take into perspective. But I started playing the harp when I was 5 years old, so which is kind of a miracle because I don't. We finally figured out why even a 5 year old would know what a harp is. My parents were really good at giving us kind of a music exploration. So we'd go and we'd see an orchestra or we'd go and see the ballet and look into the pit and just look at all the instruments. But they weren't necessarily musical, so they couldn't necessarily point to each one and identify them. But we've traced it back. I did this little at home preschool. Well, it was in someone's home, and their daughter played the harp. And sometimes she would play for all of us at preschool, and we'd go into her little harp room and sit down on the ground and she'd play. And I think that was the very first time I was exposed to the harp at about 3 or 4 years old. So at 5 years old, my parents just put me into a music store, and they said, okay, there's all these instruments. You have to pick one. And that's something in our family you have to do. You have to learn an instrument, but you can choose. And it was kind of one chooses a wizard like Harry Potter. It was clear the harp. And it's fun with that story with my preschool teacher. There's been a full circle to that. So that daughter played and now has her own daughter. And that daughter and I have crossed paths again. So the preschool teacher's daughter was the one who kind of got me into harp. Then the daughter of the preschool teacher's daughter, so the granddaughter, I actually got her into her college program. And so,
Oh,
and encouraged her to, and told her, we became friends later on. And I said, "You're a beautiful harpist. You should go audition to where I was." And then she ended up doing that. We ended up being on a harp ensemble together. So it's kind of these beautiful circles with the family of, they got me into the harp. I kind of pushed the granddaughter into collegiate harp. Then we've been in circle and rotations ever since then. So
oh my
it's this
gosh.
beautiful giving story with music.
So a harp ensemble, is that like multiple harpists playing together at the same time?
12 harps. 12 harps. It's
Wow.
beautiful. It's gorgeous.
You've got to send me a link of like what that sounds like, especially ideally one that you've actually been in. That would be beautiful. And if you're willing to have me share it with everyone, but oh my gosh, I don't think I've only heard or seen one harp at a time to my knowledge. I,
Right.
yeah,
Which is
probably
pretty
more common.
typical.
Yeah.
And most people even don't see one harp, it's so the fact that you've even seen a harp in person, but yeah, it was through the University of Utah Crimson Harps. I loved being on there. It was so fun.
Oh my gosh. And the other thing that I think in more recent years, if I think about culture and um, showing a harp, um, I think of Big Bang Theory,
Mm,
that TV show. Yeah.
yep.
And Amy playing the harp. Um, but it's just not something that you see very often. So I just love that this is part of your life. So how often do you perform? Like, and how far are you traveling? I mean, is it always in your car or do you ship it? I mean, how does that work?
Such a good question, because there's so many logistics to the harp that we don't even think about. And for example, one thing we don't think about with the harp is whenever I transport the harp, and especially if I'm transporting when it's raining or if it's really hot, that actually has an effect on the strings and they break. And that's so all the time harp strings break and I have to replace them. So that's something in consideration as I'm moving the harp. And a lot of times that's why harpists are really expensive, because the instrument is really expensive, but the liabilities of the harp and all the time we're moving it, strings are breaking, and there's just parts of that logistically it's hard. But you just have to get over it as a harpist and say, you know what, it's hard to move, but if I never move it, I'll never do this. So I remember when I was going professional with the harp, you kind of just said, I've got to be brave. I've got to move this big thing. I've got to be strong, and I've got to buy the big car, right? You have to do all the things, all the check mark things. And I right now, I would love to be gigging more than I am, but I probably do about twice a month or more every other week or once a week. I'm doing a performance, but I would love to be doing at least once a week, if not more, because it's something that we love to do. We love to share. And especially as a professional harpist, like I love to be out. I love that music connects me with people. Music is a universal language. And that's why I've loved. So I have gone to 7 different countries as a guest harpist. And we did not speak the same language, but music was the same language. And I could connect with people in a different culture. And
Hmm.
ever since then, it's resonated with me that music is my connector with people. Is we could be totally different people on different political sides or totally different upbringings or different states. It doesn't matter if there's music.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. Where are you in your general most of the time you're performing? What area of the country are you in when you're doing the road trips?
Great question. So I'm in DC right now. So I used to be on the West Coast and I was doing a lot of gigs there, but now I'm in the DC and DMV area. So I do special events out here. I do weddings. That's a lot of time. Special events and weddings is kind of where the harp comes into play. Religious groups, I play for religious groups as well. Harp goes very well with soft, beautiful gospel music.
Mm. Okay, so everyone, if you know anyone or you're in those areas, you heard Katie Ann, she'd love to be doing even more. So, we'll have
100%.
okay. So you can reach out to her and maybe, arrange something. I mean, yeah. God, I just love that. Love that about you. All right. So now let's switch gears and talk about how you got into financial counseling. What's the backstory on that?
Right.
So first of all, how'd you get into that, and what does that even mean? So let's go there.
Yeah, I love sharing my story because I think I'm relatable with people, because I got into it because I was scared to death of finances. And I think at some point, or to some degree, we all are, right? So I grew up not really knowing how to deal with finances. And I think also in this world, our culture isn't necessarily to teach women finances, right? So I just didn't have the big conversations of budgeting, and I didn't really understand how to make my money work. And I didn't realize that until I was in college. In college, I was money to me was, if I had it in my bank account, I would use it. And that doesn't really go super well as you're planning to get a degree and rooming, right? There needs to be prior planning, but in my head I didn't even know where to tackle that. And it was, if there's money there, I will buy a movie ticket. If there's not, I won't, right? And that's kind of how it was. And thankfully at that point I didn't get into any financial trauma. It by luck worked out. But one day my roommate came in just absolutely beside themselves because they had overdrawn on their bank account and were facing debt, were facing fees. And this roommate didn't know how they would pay for groceries, how they would pay for rent next month. And that is a very scary place to be. And that moment kind of triggered some trauma for me, where a realization that this could be me tomorrow. I don't know what I'm doing with money. This person is one of the smartest people I know, and suddenly unknowingly they just overdrew and now are in debt. And I had that financial trauma for a couple years, where every time I went to the grocery store, you swipe your card and I'm just, is it going to go through? Do I have money? I don't really know. I thought I checked it before. And that was a cycle. That's not a fun cycle to be in, right? It was just this cycle of fear every single time I was dealing with money. Finally, after a couple of years, I was sick of it. And I said, okay, I need to fix this issue. I've got to make sure that I'm okay with finances. I need to be more grounded in this. So I saw this community financial literacy class and said to myself that this is a perfect opportunity to at least scratch the surface. And I went to this community financial literacy class, and it was a 12-week long course. The first 3 classes were so overwhelming because I'd never been taught financial words or anything. So they were really overwhelming, and I'm kind of like a deer in the headlights as they're talking. But I really wanted to change. So I went home after the class, and there was a week in between classes. I went and studied the topic every single day for 20 minutes to make sure that I was filling myself in, that I was prepared for the next class. And that happened until about week 3, where they did the lesson on budgeting. And something just clicked in my brain. It was a true light bulb moment, like, oh my goodness, this is what I was missing. That budgeting was my key to not have fear. That budgeting was literally creating a spending plan and a future plan saying, hey, you've got buckets of money. You're fine to go and spend. Like, you don't have to be worried about this. And I was so excited. I went home and I asked my mom for help because I just needed a little bit of support. And I sat down, and for 3 hours, I'm like, man, it took me 3 hours to create my first budget. And now I'm like 30 seconds, like, here's your budget. It's perfect, like, it's changed so much. But I took 3 hours to write down my first budget. And honestly, it was not a very good budget. It was all over the place, way too many estimates, but I had done it. And I was so proud of myself. I had something written on paper that was mine. I did it. It was my budget. And about the next year, I was just kind of on fire with this clicking and the release of fear, from fear to confidence in my finances, that I wouldn't stop sharing about finances. So at the dinner table, Sunday dinners, we're all gathered the family together. I would just be chit-chatting about finances or asking questions. And finally, my family was like, okay, Katie, we love that. We also want to talk about other things. So you gotta find an avenue for this. So I started volunteering. And one thing kind of led to another. I volunteered for a couple years, became a trained volunteer, learned so much more in finances. Then I did my own budgeting TV show. And then I started my podcast, Full Confidence Ahead. Then I became a financial counselor. Then I became a financial educator. I won the National Financial Educators Award in 2022. So it kind of just like spiraled. And now I'm in the DC area. I'm on the Jumpstart Greater Washington board. Back west, I was on quite a few financial literacy boards. So it's crazy to me to look back. It's been about a 5-year journey between that fear moment and now, of that girl back then who had no idea what she was doing with finances can now today be like, yeah, bring it on. Come bring me your credit score. I can break this down. Like, let's build your credit score and let me pay off your debt. Like, we can do this. So much fear to so much confidence now that I'm proof that wherever you are with finances, that you can change and it's totally possible.
Oh, great story. And I want to share too, I know we've got a variety of people who listen to this podcast. And although you primarily are working with women, kind of 20s, 30s, 40s, and we've got some in that group. And then we've also got quite a few men that are clients and listeners who are midlife and older. So I want to throw out there for anybody listening that even if this doesn't resonate with you specifically, if this is not in your time of life, in that earlyish time she's talking about and who she's tending to work with as a financial counselor, I want you to keep in the back of your mind, what if you have a friend, a sister, a niece, uh, a child, who might benefit from Katie Ann, who might, find her really relatable and also find her energy infectious and empowering and supportive. So I want you to consider that as you continue to listen, and for having them listen to her show or follow her, because I just want to put that thought out there, because sometimes it's really helpful to think about sometimes the things that we listen to, and especially if you're a podcast listener, like, and I am myself too, to be reminded at times that, oh, this might benefit someone in my life, if not directly me. And that's really powerful to remember. So I wanted to throw that out there for everyone to have in the back of your minds as you continue listening. But so as working with people, because, well, and I also want to point out that it seems to me, from a lot that I see out in the world, from things I listen to, uh, and groups I'm involved in, and clients, and all this, that range from people who are, have comfortable life and doing well, whatever you want to call that, to people who are, semi-retired or fully retired, or able to be if they so chose, with a more affluence that they've created or have at this point in their life. That there is a common thread of challenges that we have all faced in the past and or continue to face when it comes to money. That there's a lot of stuff connected with money that's really not about money, but that we think is connected with money, which either leaves us striving to make more, from as you mentioned, fear, which, if people who have been following me for a while know I'm a certified fearless living coach. So very much about fear, what fear actually is, what's going on in the brain, all the things. And so if we're connecting our need for money and or ways we're responding or reacting to things, reaction is a key, that is actually from a place of fear, and we think money is the solution, it typically is not. And there's a lot more going on. And the more we can learn to detach from that and understand, I like the concept I've heard before too, of money is energy. It's not good or bad. Money is a thing. Technically, it's a made up thing by humans for us to relate to one another in various ways. And it's an energetic exchange. It's not good or bad. What we do with it can be used for good or bad purposes, and it can make us feel good or bad based on our filtering systems and how we're reacting to it. So I want to really delve into some of the psychology and some of the things that I know you've been trained in specifically regarding money. So go for it. Whatever's coming to mind, please
Sure.
share.
No, I'm so glad you go with that direction in money because I feel like that's kind of a bigger differentiator with me and other financial counselors is when you look at the world, there is a lot of money issues, but there's also a lot of tips and tricks you can get anywhere. So there's obviously a disconnect between like, hey, have an emergency fund and versus actually people creating one, and that's behavior. And so as a financial counselor, I'm a behavior attack person, right? Because I think everything comes down to our behavior, our personalities. Then out of that, you can get knowledge anywhere. You can Google things, but if you don't change your behavior, you're never actually going to fix those issues. So, whatever age you're at, understanding that behavior. So, I definitely come at from your money personality. Just like you make a relationship with any person in your life, you also have a relationship with money. It's something you spend time with, it's something you think about. Whether or not you want to, you think about money every single day because you have to eat, you have to be in a home, right? And so it's something that's on your mind. So you might as well have a positive relationship with money. And there's been a couple different psychologists that have put together money personalities. One that I really love is the money habitudes. And it's a test. You can just Google money habitudes. It's a little test. You can do it online.
Habitudes, like a
Habitudes.
play on habit and attitudes together. Habitudes. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Exactly. It's that play on words because it's your habits and it's your attitudes towards money. So money habitudes, and it's really interesting. It has 5 different personalities in there. You've got security, you've got spending, you've got carefree, you've got all different ones, and it's really helpful to go through and understand your own. And what I do as a financial counselor is before even looking at someone's money or asking questions, where are you with anything, I make sure to have them understand their own personality. Because we can make a spending plan, we can make a debt plan, but if it doesn't go along with your personality, it won't work, right? And the other thing people don't understand is finances are one of the biggest causes of divorce, which now that I've kind of experienced the world a little bit more and seen that, holy cow, finances can be one of the number one stresses in any relationship. But it's not actually the money, it's the money personalities. So it's going a little bit of a step deeper into that. The conflict comes when your personalities are different. So if you have a saver and a spender together, that's huge conflict, right? So in relationships, to have more positive and healthy relationships with any significant other in our lives, understanding and taking that test and talking about that together is huge, because your money personality comes half from what you had and noticed as a kid, and then half from your experience in life now. And that, and your money personality also changes throughout your life, and different things happen to you in your life, and it changes you, which mine has definitely changed over my life for sure. But understanding that can be the key, can dissolve fear, can dissolve anything with your finances. That's kind of where I start. That's my starting base with finances, is right there, that money personality.
I think that's really important for people to understand. And like you said, if you're trying to do things and you're not allowing space for that, then you're basically not giving yourself permission to be authentically you. Meaning, like,
Right.
if certain things light you up, and you have, this is a little tricky to kind of talk about, because you can do things out of a fear place and think it's lighting you up, or you can do things out of a,
Ah,
or out of a
yeah,
true
right,
confidence, true freedom space, true, like,
right,
this is really lighting me up, like, for the greater good for me, and everything is going to benefit because of this. So I can
right.
actually check myself, like me personally, I can check myself and catch if the energy and um, intention and reason behind me wanting to buy something is based out of more of a fearful place, or more out of what I refer to as more of a freedom place.
Right.
And if my initial, answer to that, before I start overthinking it and manipulating my answer in my head, if my initial answer is, ooh, no, this is a fear response, just kind of that, ooh, do I really, is this coming from the best place in me? If the answer is no, then, then I try to catch that and not do that. So, and yet on the other hand, if I completely limit myself, because I am more of that kind of spender, more of kind of a maverick. There's a sacred money archetypes is one that I've done in the past too, and in that
Yep.
primarily a maverick personality. We I can be that risk taker. A lot of my listeners are entrepreneurs. We tend to be a little bit more risk taking and like be okay and know that somehow we'll find the way, find the money, find the thing for the risk that we're doing, and we want to go for it. Um, there's feeding that in a healthy way because it's part of who we are. It's something that people love about us too. And then there's feeding that in the unhealthy way. So, the shopping is an example, but also even risk taking in business or in some other uh, areas of my life, I've caught myself where it's if I completely listen to the society, cultural, like what you should be doing, quote unquote, to have this much, you know, be the responsible in this way and do this and do that. Like if I stick myself in all those boxes, I feel like I'm going to suffocate myself, and then that's not working for my personality and what makes me happy. At the same time, if I go into things with what just what works for me and what makes me happy, well, that's like can be a little overly self-indulgent and I don't want to say selfish because I don't like the connotation that word has gotten over the years. I think coming from not necessarily what is actually healthiest for me in the moment, and sometimes can be indulging again what is actually a hidden fear that I don't want to face.
Right. I love that you brought that up because I think people have in their mind that money and finances are a whole different skill set, and they're not. It's everything that you teach just applied just specifically to money. Like you mentioned the fear. I always when I talk to people I always bring up budgeting because that tends to be a societal norm that people are budgeting, right? But if you know how to budget, then you know how to time manage. But really the deeper trick underneath that, or the deeper principle, is prioritizing, right? It's finding like what makes you feel fulfilled, which I know you talk about fulfillment, freedom,
Mm-hmm.
fear. All those topics are things that you cover, but it's really digging down deep. That's all budgeting is digging down deep and saying what's my most important priority, and I'm going to make sure that I'm honoring myself and putting that at the top of my budget and saying, and I'm just going to give that a number value. All it is putting a number value to everything that you teach and cultivate and help people be and become. And so as people learn finances, they're just learning life skills that are applicable across the board, not just to money, or vice versa. As you learn life skills, that's also applicable. Just think of everything for your podcast listeners. I would challenge you to even just think right after, for 30 seconds after this podcast, think of all the things that Charis has taught you or that you've gotten, and how would that apply to money? Because there's direct relations right there.
That's a great correlation. So budgeting connected with, I mean, I know we know this on some level, but like really thinking about it. And you can also apply this to your business. So if you're thinking about running
Oh,
your business, starting a business, switching a business, selling a business, all of that. But budgeting, whether it's personal and or business, is really in connection with priorities. And all of that is connection with life skills. That's, I'm not sure I've put all those together in that easy, connect the dots way. Um, it it helps simplify it though, and you're right. I think budgeting can be a word that people don't always like to think about and look at,
yeah.
whether it's
Oh, yeah.
personal or business. A lot
Right.
of reactions that come up when you think about that thing, because I think some of us feel like constrained. Like, wait, you're not going to let me do my thing? Well, I'm going to find the money to do the thing. And many people can and will, but at the end of the day, all of this is just so much of life is just made up stuff. Like it's
Yeah,
we
that's true. A lot of made up fears too along the way.
yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of that. Yeah.
And we take it all so seriously. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying don't take some of like I get that to live a comfortable life there needs to be some paying attention to your certain bills and making sure things are on time or setting up systems, like, and for running a business. I get all of that. And I am convinced, and the older I get, I'm finding that we take everything too seriously,
Me,
especially
I'm
money.
guilty.
Yeah.
I'm so guilty. I wrote down, I kind of do like weekly planning and goals every Sunday, or at least I'm trying to do that every Sunday. And I literally wrote down this week to laugh more because I believe that. So much of life is made up fears, and so much of life we're taking way too seriously. I
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah. So if we can just look at some of these things as, and when you think about budgeting too, that's a common word used with money and it's used with time.
Yep,
But I would
absolutely.
also say consider it in usage with your energy too. And money and time are a way to spend energy as well. They're I believe. So so in all of that, all of those things relate to priorities completely. And all of that relates to life skills. So it's just really powerful to put all this into perspective and zoom out a bit, and then
Right.
also consider: are we taking any of this too seriously? So when you're freaked out about some area of your budget, of your time, of your money, of your energy, of something, can you make it not so serious? Can you look at, well, what is my priority here? How can I shift some things? If your priority actually is in that area and you're finding it feeling squeezed time wise or money wise, then what's a way you can consider play, a playful way to shift the priorities or move some resources there? Like, what can you consider it to be more of a game so that you can be a little more lighthearted? And also, that brings in the right brain, which we don't use as much on a daily
Right.
basis as I would like us to, which also engages creativity, problem solving, expansiveness, opportunities, possibilities, um, more collective connection. It's a beautiful place to live more from. And it's also where more peace of mind comes in, more fulfillment, all of that. So if we can play and not take all of this so seriously, which is, again, why I think your personality is such a great fit for this topic, because it's funny that, not funny, it's interesting to me that you wrote down that you had a goal this week of laughing more, because
Yeah.
you seem like someone who laughs a lot and smiles a lot, at least in my interaction with you. But what I experience and how you experience your life are two different things, obviously. And
Yeah.
it's your priority to bring more of that levity into your life. So, and I'm looking at you saying she's a perfect fit for being a financial counselor, because just being in your space, it just brings some kind of like lightheartedness to it. I think you have that energy about you. So I think that's really fascinating that that's one of your, it's no coincidence that's a priority for you, because you bring
Right.
it. Yeah.
Thank you. I love that you mentioned gamification with finances too, and just want to make a little comment off of that, and having too much gravity in our lives. Finances is obviously a big topic, right? But I think people carry way too much weight with it. And for example, with budget, that's where I'm always struggling with people, is budgets. So I actually rebrand that, and I typically call it spending plans, because it helps us kind of have a reframe and have fun. But when, instead of pinching pennies, or when you're starting a business trying to figure out how to finance, have a game with it. And my belief with spending plans and budgeting: don't strive to be perfect. This is a guideline. Like when I teach my people about budgeting or a spending plan, it's a guide. In some weeks and some months, you're going to do so good on that guide. And some months you're going to be like, wow, that is going to be useful as a learning tool that I'm going to realize. Because I really think it's funny, because when you say about priorities, people are always, they come to me like, oh, I don't really know what my priorities are. And in life, and just in life in general, not money. And I always say, give me your financial records and I'll tell you what your priorities are. because it's so telling. If you want to know what you really value in life, go look up your card transactions and it'll tell you. And it might be a little bit hard to face that yourself, like, oh, wow, I really actually do prioritize XYZ because that's where I'm putting my resources. And that's the definition of priorities, right? If you're putting your time, effort, and resources towards it, that's your priority. And is it really what you want, or is it not what you want? But having that a little bit more light with finances, loosening up, you don't need to have a budget and be perfect by tomorrow. You have a budget to learn. It's a learning tool to help you understand. I adjust mine once a month, if not more than that, because your priorities change throughout the month, throughout the week, right? And that is okay. Use that as a guide to then shift, be malleable, utilize it as a tool and not a weapon against yourself.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. Yes. Yeah, we eh, when I'm working with someone, one of the things I catch a lot with them and shine a light on, because basically you're talking about, hey, give me your finances and I'll tell you what your priorities are. And in a way that you may be shocking to you, you're shining a light on something that they haven't, you're giving, you're looking at it from a different angle and saying, instead of how they're choosing to see it, and their perspective that's through a certain lens. And similarly, when I'm working with people and I'm shining a light on like words that they use that they didn't even weren't even aware of, that comes up in
Right.
a so they're explaining
Right.
something. Like just today there was something that was a phrase of kind of the phrase was implying, basically it was there, it came up twice in different ways, and I shined a light on that, of kind of like somebody was doing something to make him be this way. And so feeling kind of put on by someone else, and shining that light, just saying, hey, I just want to show you this, because this is actually what you said. And you're just saying, hey, I just want to, like, look, the numbers, this is just data. And I'm just saying, yeah, this is just data, this is just what came out of your mouth, and I want this just to show you what is going on in your subconscious that you may not even be aware of, which is like you're saying, this is I want to show you how what your behaviors, your actions are showing about what's a priority in your life. There's no good or bad, there's no right or wrong. If we turn it into that, then that's when we feel awful. So if we can try to look at it and take it all as lessons, so that we can avoid all the triggering moments that make us reactive and freak out, um, hold tight, you know, uh, almost oversave or overspend, or all the things that we can do as reactions out of freaking out,
Right. Right.
that makes us not feel good and either keep chasing stuff or cause a wedge in relationships, like you mentioned too. All of those things come into play. So that, yeah, I love the way you talk about this. And I just really want to shine a light for people that we are to be open to have that light be shined to expose stuff that they maybe aren't able to see. And that's where there's people out in the world like Katie Ann and I in our different respective areas, to be there to make it easier in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to just go like see it for yourself and suddenly have all the stories and all the fear and that whole part of your brain just completely wig out on you. You can have someone there to gently look at it and just have it be data and information, instead of making up the story of how you've done something wrong, or you don't deserve something, or you better get it figured out and be perfect, or you're not worthy of something in your life. Because we all have a version of that.
Well said. Couldn't have put that in better words myself. Well said.
What do you think is what of your top, like if you could give us your top one or two tips or techniques or tools or something that you share with people that you find to be like get their toe in the water with some of this stuff that may be uh, intimidating them, or if they notice that they're a little extra tight or extra spendy or whatever their issue is, or they have relationship issues around money. What's something coming to mind that you think is super helpful that you can pass along with
Yeah.
us to us?
Perfect. Just bump off of what you just said too. The number one tip I have for people is write down your expenses. Save your receipts and actually write them down. That is hard oftentimes because you're admitting to yourself, like, oh my goodness, I'm actually spending this. And I think in this world, we're so on instant gratification, and we've lost the value of responsibility, of taking responsibility for our thoughts, our actions, our emotions. And writing down your expenditures helps really take responsibility and just own it, because you can't correct a mistake unless you own it. But I don't even talk about mistakes in finances. They're just things that happen. We judge ourselves too often on what we do instead of just noticing and choosing instead of reacting, which is all that you do, right? And so if people can stop and write down their expenditures, they're owning it, saying, wow, I really am doing that. Now, do I want to, or do I not want to be doing that? Then, if you want to, lean into what you want and you'll have more gratification behind that. And if not, then make a different choice, right? So that's my favorite place to start. If budget seems so scary or that's okay. Just start writing down and don't judge yourself. Don't be like, oh, I spent number, right? Doesn't matter. Just write it down and celebrate, like, hey, 90% of the world won't even admit that they spent this much, and I am here taking responsibility for my actions. And then the next step is, okay, now what do I want to do? Because I am the one in my control of my finances, not the world, not the ads telling me to buy things, not my emotions. When I have the impulse spend, I am in control of my actions, and I love them, and I love the things I buy because I bought them with intention, and then choose from there. And you'll never be perfect and never expect yourself to be perfect, but just take responsibility for your actions. That's the best thing to do. Also, really good in a relationship, because then you can go and be like, hey, yeah, I did make that purchase and that made me a better person and it made me show up better in our relationship. Or like, I did make that purchase and I will not make that purchase again. Like it's whatever the result may be, you can show up and be like, yes, and right.
What do you have to say to people who find themselves in a situation where they've um, technically on paper got more like they're very safe and secure investment, like,
Yeah.
really in a financially fabulous place, and yet there's guilt associated with certain spending that comes up and catches them off guard, or guilt when or a judgment about a significant other partner when they spend money in a certain way, or a reaction to spending money in one area but they have no problem spending it in another. And again, I want to just talk for a moment to some of the people out there who are definitely very financially secure. On paper, all is well, and yet there's a disconnect with the inner security.
Right. I I love that you said that, because I think this is huge. And what I see a lot of times, people who are more fluent are like, why would I ever need a budget? Like, I have the resources. These are the people who need a budget the most. Because one, you have so many resources, there's always a better way to allocate that, right? You could be getting dividends off of those, you can be getting returns, like there's things you can do with them. But besides that,
I love your excitement.
it's so
You like lit up
I'm like
dividends, returns.
that's like my thing. Like that's my thing. I love it. I'm like, oh, I can help you. Like stack your CDs, or let's put that in investment. Like, oh yeah. But I think besides that, of people who are so affluent, that's when your money personality jumps out the most. Is when you have an abundance of resource. Then because you don't have a plan, you are full your personality, whatever that may be. And I feel like a lot of times when I'm dealing with the affluent families or affluent people, they tend to be this money security or money saving, to the point of almost extreme, to not want to spend, and that doesn't allow you to be free, right? That's like you said, that's coming back to a place of fear. But if you're relying only on your money personality and not on your choices, That's an issue, whatever your money personality may be. So to those people who are affluent right now, honestly, and even though you're like, I have all the money that I need to cover my needs, why would I do a budget? You're the one who needs to do the budget the most, because or else you're going to fall even more into the trap of choosing things that are just based off of your personality, and oftentimes that fear personality, not your freedom side, right? um, but making that plan and choosing, it'll help with arguments with spouse, it'll help you choose and be satisfied with what you have. And so that's huge. That's the thing I work with most with affluent people is, yeah, we create that spend plan. Even these are the people who don't think they need it, and I'm like, oh, you're gonna feel so good in 3 months after using this, and they always do. They come back and are so excited, right?
How
Because
do you
they're
think
choosing.
yeah, okay, so well, I think you just answered. Because I got excited and didn't let you finish your words, but I think you just answered with because they're choosing, because what I was about to ask was, how does that alleviate them of some of the guilt and or judgment that they may feel of, like, or the risk of it going away, especially if they're first generation who's accumulated it and maybe didn't grow up that way. But I think you just said it. So talk to that a little bit more. But you said because they're choosing. So
Right.
yeah, and so choice is a big one. And so I want you to go ahead, go into that a little bit more.
Right. I think we trust it when we make our own choices, right? For example, let's just take a restaurant choice. When you choose your menu item, you chose it, right? So you honor the choice, you eat your food. And sometimes you like it and sometimes you don't. So the next time you go to that restaurant, you say, "Hey, I had a good choice. I'm going to do it again." Or you go and like, "Oh, didn't like that choice, going to try something different," right? But whatever you choose helps mold you and gives you confidence, right? Because you chose it. Now, if we went to the same restaurant and let's say your friend was like, "Oh, I know all the good stuff." And so they ordered whatever for you and you're like, "Oh, that didn't taste good." It didn't give you confidence in the restaurant. It didn't give you confidence in your other choices. It was just a circumstance that happened rather than your choice. Confidence can only come through choosing. It never comes by bystanding. It never comes by not doing anything. Confidence only comes through choices. And a lot of times they're choices that you learn from. They're not perfect choices, but choosing something, see, without judgment, noticing the consequences, like noticing your life like data, just stepping back and saying, wow, what happened off of that choice? And then moving to the next thing and saying, okay, because that happened, will I repeat or will I not repeat? Right? That's the cycle of confidence is choice, no judgment and reflection, choosing to repeat, choosing to modify with that. And so that helps with our affluent families or affluent individuals is it's so difficult, especially if yeah, if it's that first generation of wealth, that's something hard earned. You've done that and you should celebrate that. But also your celebration shouldn't be just stockpiling on fear. For example, if you lived up in a family that you didn't have the resources and now you're the first one in the family to bring those resources, it's easy to fall into fear of just stockpiling it and falling into the habits of still penny pinching even though you have the resources. And so instead of choosing fear, make a conscious choice, notice without judgment, then choose again, right? And just keep going through that cycle and it's so freeing.
Okay, that's fabulous. Now, choice too, in relation. So I don't know that I've heard it phrased that way. I love that in connection with confidence. And I want to connect. You did a little bit, and I want to go there a little bit more. Connect choice with fear. So, what I talk about a lot is that uh, the result of taking risks, that's how you build your confidence. You've got to take risks to build your confidence.
I love that.
And
I love that.
risk is making
It's a
choices.
choice. It's
Risk
just a
is, yeah,
choice.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like every choice has a consequence or a potential risk, possibly. I mean, you may or may not see it that way, but you're either going to gain something or a perceived gain, a perceived loss, a perceived reaction from something or someone, like choosing one thing over another. If you can't have both, there is often some level, even if it's low level risk. And So you choose something. Well, and also we should point out, not choosing is actually choice. When you don't choose,
Oh
you're
yeah.
choosing. If you say, well, I'm just not going to choose, you've chosen, right?
Right, right. And you're choosing to let it lead by fear when you don't choose. And you're choosing to let habits come in. You're choosing to let anything but yourself go in when you don't choose, right? It's that is a choice to not choose.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
not a
because it
great one.
no, it's not a great one because that is a choice. It is a choice to not choose, ironically. You think you're not doing the
Right,
thing, but you totally are
right,
doing the thing. And then there, you can also make choices out of fear. Like you can say yes when you really want to say no, or no when you want to say yes, or be afraid to even say I don't know and I need more information, or to speak up and say, like you mentioned being at the restaurant, to speak up and say, I have a question for the person about a couple dishes. And even though, the person with you is kind of gets annoyed by people who take a long time to order, or maybe those things can come
right.
up, and but no, the truth is, I really have for me to enjoy this meal, I have a question, and so I'm going to speak up, take a risk of this other person I'm with who typically has a reaction in this moment, possibly. I mean, this is just an example.
Right, right.
So then you've got to make the choice to speak up in spite of the risk, and take some time, take up space. But the more you do that, the more confidence you get. And again, that's a really small example, but I think one we can all relate to, because how many times have we just been like, oh, just whatever, or just settled, or just said the first thing that we saw that we knew was going to be easy and that we know we like, but we didn't really take the little time or little effort, or want to spend the little money, or want to whatever it is, whether to create a more enjoyable experience.
Right. Living life intentionally brings confidence and brings fulfillment. I love how you said that in life. Um, just choosing will bring you joy. And the cycle of choosing, making better choices every day, not perfect, but choosing better. And you just do that by taking a risk, making a choice, evaluating, and redoing it.
Yes. Yes. And I love that she said earlier too, you can always choose again. You can always choose
Yeah.
again. That's what we're doing in this whole human experience, constantly choosing
Every
again
day.
every day.
Right.
And you can change your
All the
mind.
time.
Yeah. You can change your
Right.
mind. You can change your mind. You can change your mind. You can give yourself permission to keep changing, because this world is continuing to change. Let's, go ahead. Go ahead. Change with it. Change however you want. So, your podcast, again, Full Confidence Ahead, we'll have a link to it in the show notes and below this video. You have some great people on there. Just tell us a little bit about it, and then also we'll have you share one of your favorite quotes before we wrap up. So, tell us a little bit more about
Sure.
your podcast.
Yeah, full confidence ahead. So it based off of my story of finances and confidence, right? Because I realized that everyone needs financial knowledge, but also life skills are finance skills. So every about fifth to seventh episode is a financial one, and in between it's life skills, because they're intermixing, right? It's all a part of life improvement. So it's tackling the fears of life, and I say fears because there's many, right? Of going from fear to confidence by bringing on, I just bring on different guests of different areas, like you, who's an incredible leader in their area. So I just bring on leaders in the area talking the life skills, sharing their stories of fear to confidence, with a financial one every fifth to seventh episode, and then everything in between of just having those life skills. We all need them at any age. If you're 1 year old, if you're 99, doesn't matter. We're still in this thing called life, and every day we need skills.
Fabulous. And and then best way to reach you too, if they wanted to actually reach out, what's the best way
Yeah.
to find you besides your podcast?
Perfect. Yep. My podcast is my primary one. So Full Confidence Ahead. A lot of times you can message me or comment on that. And I see all those all the time. Another way is if you're interested in the harp side, harpist Katie Ann. And that's my Instagram. I'm pretty active on that. Or if you want to know more, or if you have a person on that you think would be good on my podcast, you can always go to harpist Katie Ann. And that's where I chat more individually. You can DM me, and that's where I'm active chatting.
Okay, fabulous. Now, your favorite quote to close us off.
Perfect. This one's by Winston Churchill. I love it. It's a little bit longer, but it says, "To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered a chance to do something, do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour." Ooh, that gives me
Mm.
chills every time, because it's that first half is so beautiful. Like, wow, I think there's an opportunity, a unique one for every individual. And then the second half just reminds me of, okay, Katie Ann, when that opportunity comes, could I step up to the plate and be like, I'm ready to do it, right? Just love that quote.
Mm. Makes me, yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I really felt something in like my heart space there, literally. Beautiful, beautiful choice. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay,
Absolutely.
bye everyone for now. And I can't wait. I'll see if Katie Ann will share something too, a link to her playing the harp, because I think that'd be really fun to share. So I'll see if I can twist her arm.
I'd be happy
Twist her
to.
arm.
I'd
Okay,
be
good.
happy to.
Okay, good. Yay. Okay, so look for that below too. Okay, bye everyone for now.